There have been a few immigration-related series to hit Netflix in recent weeks, the most current being Immigration Nation. It's a limited series documentary that takes a look at immigration within the United States. It's topical and it's relevant, but is it binge-worthy? Cameras follow many different enforcement agencies and departments, as well as immigrants, to find out what it's like on both sides of the fence. Now, you know, when I come across a munchie that is worthy of sharing, I'm certainly going to tell you about it. And this is one that my sons found and then brought home. It's Mountain Dew Frostbite. Now, this stuff is obviously blue, and it's kind of a berry flavor, and honestly, I don't know how widely released it is all over the place. I know that in California, and specifically in Sacramento where I'm at, we are a test market for a lot of different sodas and beverages, and so sometimes some of these things that I find in my local grocery store may not be available everywhere. I hope that it is. I hope that you can find it someplace and then try and, well, at least try it. It's kind of a berry flavor, but really more than anything, it tastes like a blue Slurpee and diabetes. If you drink more than one bottle in a sitting, your blood sugar is going to go through the roof. You're probably going to need to call an ambulance. So don't do that. Just drink one, always in moderation. But hey, you know what? Mountain Dew Frostbite, it's actually pretty good. So if you can find it someplace, at least give it a try. And again, I am not sponsored by Mountain Dew. I would love to be, especially because I love Baja Blast. That is my absolute favorite. I could drink that by the gallon. And the only thing I like more than that is grape Kool-Aid, which none of this has anything to do with the review, but hey, when I come across something that's worthy of sharing, especially as a munchie, I'm going to tell you about it. In Immigration Nation, it's really interesting because the cameras have a lot of access. I mean, we get a lot of interviews with ICE agents, and it's not all the same like company line that you might expect. I mean, we get widely varying takes on policy and even how they execute their orders. I mean, a lot of the time, their opinions, they're unfettered and unfiltered, and we just get to hear it. And so if they don't agree with something, and yet it's still part of their job, they're going to stick with the absolute part that they have to, and then let the other things slide. We get to see how some aspects of the U.S. enforcement part of it have become more like a business than a law enforcement agency. I mean, they have accrual goals, they have targets to hit, they have dashboards that they were watching, and hey, if you're not hitting your numbers, you're out of here. But in addition to the enforcement officials, we also get a lot of interviews with people who have been detained. One I found that was really interesting was a former cop. This man had come from El Salvador, and I found it really interesting because while he was working as a police officer in El Salvador, he was actually helping out the police in the United States with identifying gangs and gang members. And then when word got back to where he was at that he was actually doing this, the life of him and his family became threatened and dire, and so he gave up everything and then came to the United States. He was seeking asylum under protection and just had to, as circumstances wasn't as timely as it needed to be, he entered the country illegally. And then once here, though, I found it really, kind of cool that he became a plumber. Now, he had to give up his law enforcement background, but he became a plumber. He paid all of his bills. He paid all of his taxes. And what I have utmost respect for this man is his integrity. When the ICE agents came to arrest him, to then take him in for processing and ultimately deportation, he was kind, he was polite, and when he calls his family to let them know what's going on, one of his last words is, hey, the car payment is due on this date. You need to make sure that you pay it. This guy certainly wasn't a threat to society or anything else. Another account of an immigrant was totally odd. This man had come over when I think he was either a young boy or a teenager, young teenager at most, and had lived here. And then when he became 18, he enlisted in the United States Marines. And he served his time and the United States as a Marine. He's honorably discharged, and then through some other events a little later on, and I don't know exactly what it was, I don't know if it was a traffic stop or whatever, he's found out to be an illegal alien and then is deported. Now, first off, I have so many questions about why a non-U.S. citizen was allowed to enlist in the armed forces. I think that would be some kind of security risk, right? If just anybody could sign up. But it does show in this guy's case, at how much he felt that he was a U.S. citizen. I mean, he had been brought here by his mom. He lived here. He had become a productive member of society, going to school, and then serving his country, and then to be deported, even being shown that, hey, I am a U.S. veteran. That's just insane, and I can't wrap my head around all of that. I wish the documentary would have dove more into those specifics and answered some more of those questions, because they weren't satisfying. The beginning of the series is surprisingly balanced. I really expected it to be bent one way or the other, but on the whole, it's generally not taking a side. I mean, it really does show the positives and negatives from both perspectives. The latter half of the documentary, though, does begin to lean more towards the immigrant side versus the enforcement side. A lot of this documentary is really interesting, but it's also very frustrating. I mean, I was trying to put myself in the place of somebody who's trying to come into this country, to be an immigrant through whatever status. And a lot of these people were doing it the letter of the law. They were sticking to what they were told. And that's where the frustration comes in, to really see how convoluted and how hard it is to actually understand the laws and to get processed and to do all of the steps that it takes, and then still to be just put in some kind of limbo. And that could be for any number of reasons, whether you're coming over for financial reasons or you're truly seeking asylum out of protection. The documentary also does a really good job of showing how policies and procedures have changed through different White House administrations over the years. The law is typically black and white. I mean, it's good or bad, it's right or wrong. And so it's kind of a one-size-fits-all situation. But when you look at all of the circumstances of the people within this documentary, a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't really fit. I mean, it's a very complicated situation, and one that really should be examined on a case-by-case basis. So if you have somebody who's coming over and they are truly seeking asylum out of protection, or you take like the guy who served his country in the Marines, that shouldn't be just blank slated across, well, you know what, hey, you're out of here. Well, no, let's look at all the circumstances. Are you a productive member of society? Are you paying your taxes? Do you have employment? Do you have a place to live? And oh my gosh, you served our country in the armed forces. Well, here, I'm sorry that for any inconvenience. But the documentary doesn't really address all of that. It doesn't provide a solution. It just gives us, here is the stuff that's going on. Here is the things that we see. And this is how we see it presented, whether you like it or not. And so you get the detainees and the immigrants, their perspective, their stories, their just from their eyes and from their mouths. And then you get the enforcement officers, and some of them are jaded, some of them are very compassionate. And then you also have politicians or former leaders of different departments and divisions, and them weighing in, and sometimes they're very frustrated at how things have changed over time, and other ones who are, you know what, I'm towing the company line, this is what I was hired to do, this is what I'm saying, and okay. It's a limited series and it's 6 episodes long, with each episode being about an hour. I found the first few episodes really exciting and interesting, but my interest did begin to wane a little bit as I got to the last 2 episodes. Now, that's not to say that they weren't good and they weren't interesting. I think maybe it was that I had done this to myself, that I chose to binge watch all 6 episodes in one sitting, and maybe it was just too much. Maybe it was just so heavy and so much information and so many stories that my brain was kind of saying, you know what, no, you should have taken a break, and then let's attack the last 2 or 3 episodes in another sitting, and you will be refreshed and ready to hear all of the information coming at you. Now, one thing I do wish that the filmmakers would have done is some follow-up. We get to see some of these people that they've interviewed, and we get to see, a lot of their story as they go through the process of ICE and through deportation and everything. They're put on a plane, they're put on a bus, whatever that is, and then we don't hear about them again. We still see maybe a little bit about their family here in the United States that are left, but we don't know what happens after that. I would have kind of liked just a little bit more information. I especially think about that officer who came from El Salvador, who had helped out the police here in the United States and then was deported. And the reason he came here was protection asylum. And so I just want to know, is he still alive? Did he make it? Did he move to a different country and get asylum there? What happened to him? I just would really like to know, and that's my own personal interest. It's not a fault of the documentary. So overall, this is a really interesting watch, and I really recommend that you check it out, but maybe not binge all 6 episodes in one sitting. There's no sex and nudity, but a lot of profanity and some violent and disturbing imagery. I'm very curious if you live outside the United States, what your immigration policy is. Is it relaxed? Is it very stringent? Is it absolutely not? Or, hey, everybody is welcome? I mean, I would love to know, because I do know that a lot of people from a lot of different countries are on YouTube, obviously. And so if you happen to be checking that out and you can provide some insight, I'd just like to know. I'm very curious. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.